good to know. So we're pretty much done with season 3.
Okay.
But we have a hole because Charlotte had her heart out, so that was we're just going to keep her episode at 1, and then we were going to try and get Lamar back on, I think, and then we have to record Chris's after behind the post or beyond the post podcast for Chris's stuff. And honestly, there were so many technical issues on that one. I don't know. I don't remember because you remember I dropped out like the last 10 minutes.
Uh-huh.
So I don't remember exactly all the details on that one. So I'm gonna edit that one this week. So we have one episode, maybe 2 that we need to. One episode with a guest that we need to record. One episode to sum up Chris's episode or interview, and then maybe one more if we want to do one more beyond that.
Okay. Let me hit Lamar up and see if we can't get him for maybe the week after next, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send you my days because I'm starting the middle of the week rotation at work, so it makes it a little bit more complicated. But I'll send you the days.
Yeah, and just so you know, my schedule has changed a little bit, so I'm now no longer a co-host at DTNS. I am now regular host. So with that, I'm doing 3 additional DTNS podcasts a week. Doesn't really mean much for us because usually the days we recorded on were like Wednesdays whenever you're free. And then we just figure it out when you're not free on Wednesdays. So as long as we can kind of stick to that, I'm good. But what I do not have any longer is I don't have my Friday afternoons available. I don't have I always have Tuesday afternoons. I always have Wednesday afternoons, but I no longer have Friday afternoons. So that just, this is because I'll be doing DTNS. And then even on Monday, I would say, well, we can do it like midday Monday or something like that. I'm doing DTNS briefing. I haven't done one yet. Tom keeps saying, Rob, it only takes 20, 30 minutes. So if that's the case, then I can definitely work around that because my stuff is just 100% recorded. But that'll be kind of like in the middle of my day on Mondays as well. So, yeah, I think I mentioned to you that I'm making some changes. So I'm doing more stuff that I like to do that's generating revenue and doing less stuff that I don't particularly care to do that doesn't generate that much. So just to let you know, it's like my Friday afternoons are gone where I used to have them before. And then I have like a half hour on Mondays if we needed a Monday, it'll just have to be like a little later. Or actually earlier, early in the day on Mondays, I can go just because I don't have anything until the afternoon. Okay. That would be cracking on your time. I'm
going to leave this in for patrons, but that works. I think right now we're in a good spot because season 1 and 2, we were pretty close to the edge of recording and getting each episode out. Like Ashley was at the last minute for season 2, trying to get all that done. Mm-hmm. I think we're in a better place because we took a little bit longer of a break. We're at a better place with season 3 because I have all of Corey's stuff done. I have Charlotte's episode pretty much done. There's a rough cut that I sent to you. I don't know if you got a chance to look at it. Mm-hmm. And then we have Chris, and if we have Lamar on, I do want to pitch maybe Zion finally finished his podcast, and Rob, it's really good.
Okay.
The problem with this guy, I don't want to call him a kid. He's 21. Problem is he obsesses more than I do over editing, like to the point where we sat down twice. The first time we went through about the first 30 minutes of the podcast and we're out of time of his podcast. And the second time we went through the entire thing of editing. And I think maybe he puts a little too much emphasis on it, but and I'm just going to give it a shout out right here since people are hopefully listening. It's called Blackness with the question mark at the end. But yeah, he is a really good interviewer. He just needs to get a little bit faster. I told him 3 days should be the max amount of time he's spending 45 minutes of audio editing. But
so his episodes are 45 minutes long, and he's taking, when you say 3 days, months. I'm thinking 24 hours.
Buddy, so it's months. I was like, I can write an episode of Kilowatt. I can write and record it and edit it the same day. If I have somebody on, like I talked to Chris Ashley today, I'm going to talk to him about his barbecue and tech food truck and running it off of the F-150 Lightning. Mm-hmm. Like I can do an interview and edit it and have it out the same day. He should be able to do the same, but he obsesses, like really obsesses. So he puts out a good product, but yeah, I'll send you a link to it. It's such a good interview.
Yeah. So I am not one of those audio snobs to where it has to sound like an NPR, like show, to where they're literally they're telling a story with the show, to where there's all these editing and B-roll, even though it's audio, but they've got the B-roll stuff in, and all of that stuff. I know if you're doing that level of sound design, excuse me, that takes quite a bit of time. So I don't want to say that I don't think there's a place for that. I just don't know that if it is a talking head interview, that is the place for it. Because there is what is it like? There's lost benefit when you continue to put more time into the edit, but the edit isn't like expansive to where you're doing that sound design and you're literally telling the story, and you were on the street getting, some interview and talking to somebody, and you were in an office talking to somebody, and there's different sounds for the different places you are. I don't know that any of that adds to it. As long as you don't sound, as long as you don't sound like crap, as long as you sound like there's not a lot of reverb in it. I think that for a talking head interview, if you do a little bit of sound design, put, music beds in places, I think you're good. So I never want to see someone spend more than like 3 to 1 to 4 to 1 editing something like what we do, because I think that's even excessive.
Yeah. You're 100% right. He doesn't have any of that NPR stuff on there. Maybe one day, but he just wants to put out the best possible product. And I'm like, buddy, this is not substantially better than the thing that I saw 2 weeks ago. Let's go. Let's put it out. But I'm proud of him for actually getting it out to this point, because, I think you and I, when we started way back in October of 2023, we talked. I said, "Hey, Zion's working on something. I'd like to have him on the show at some point." And actually, I would like to have him on for sure, because I do think it would be a good episode in terms of helping people with the paralysis that I don't have the right equipment, or I don't have the experience, or nobody's going to want to listen to me, or any of those other things. So I think that would be a good thing in terms of for the audience. But yeah, he is, Rob. He's so good in this interview, and he interviewed the first Black female. I think she was the first Black student body president of ASU's downtown campus, or something like that. And she's a great guest too, which also helps the episode. But what doesn't help is the amount of time obsessing over each episode. So I know he's got some more interviews lined up, and I'm trying to help him. He also has some things, like I've been wanting to promote it, but I can't find it on Apple Music. I can find it on Spotify, but I can't find it like when I do searches for it in other podcasts like iHeartRadio or whatever. I can't find it, and it's hard to promote something. We have another meeting coming up, hopefully, where we can kind of sort through some of those technical issues, because
do you know who he's hosting his show with?
He's hosting on my account, so I pay for his hosting.
So yeah, so if he's using Acast, he should be everywhere, man, because with Acast you can tell it to push out to all the places. So, but
you have to you have to follow up with some of those emails, and I don't know if he did, and he did send at one point in time. It was on Apple Podcasts, and then it disappeared. and I think it disappeared because some of those places have like, hey, just is this you?
You have to verify your email.
You have to verify, and I don't know that he verified. So there's some things that we have to go through. Yeah. But the product itself, the interview itself, he did a great job on. There's some technical things that we need to walk through, but I think that would be helpful for people just in general to discuss that in public. And he's pretty realistic where his shortcomings are, and he accepts criticism really well. So I think it would be a good episode. But yeah,
okay, yeah.
Makes me laugh, that kid.
Folks, don't come for me because I have never been one of those people who just edits forever to get something out. Because, Bodie, where that becomes a problem for me is that I need to be done with the one thing before I start the next thing. And I know some people, they'll do 10 interviews and no editing. And then when they get done with the 10 interviews, then they will edit all 10 shows. And the way I am wired, it'll never happen. It's like I'll get bored if I'm not actually doing the thing that I truly enjoy doing. Not that I have a problem with doing editing, but I don't have a problem with doing it. It's not like if somebody says, hey, who loves editing, podcast, content? That's just not me. I've never been that. I like being in front of the microphone. So, like I said, so don't come for me. I know some people people have won awards for just how they do the editing and the sound design and all that kind of stuff. I just have not done that. If I were to ever be on that type of show, I purely would only be talent because there will be no editing coming from me on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. He also, he recorded passing the microphone back and forth, just a regular ATR 2100 that his mom bought him for Christmas last year. So, and it sounds good. Rob, it sounds really good. And he didn't have any, like, I've got all these plugins and stuff like that. He didn't have access to that. He did it on Adobe Audition. He now has, I bought him for Christmas, I bought him the Anchor M650 lavalier mics because he was going to interview, I think, the vice president of the School of Journalism at ASU. I think that's who was interviewed next. So I was like, well, let's up your game a little bit if you're gonna go that high and not interview, one of your peers. And so I bought him that. I don't know if he used it or not. We'll see.
I will say this: you and I both, without talking to each other, both got a little device that we took to CES. I can't think of the name of it because honestly, I don't know that the name of it matters. There are probably a dozen brands.
The little sticks.
The little stick. So for those who are not watching us right now, because I don't actually have mine with me. Actually, I do have mine with me. I still have a bag of all my stuff that I took to CES. So this is the device, and I'll explain it for people who are not listening right now or who are not watching right now. In just a moment, but it's a stick. Like I said, I pulled the sticker off of mine, so I have no idea who makes this. But if you just look on, Amazon for wireless microphone wand, you will see a dozen or more companies come up. And basically, what this is, it's a fake microphone. It looks like a handheld microphone. And it has a wind muff over it, and when you take the wind muff off, you can then take your wireless microphone. It really doesn't matter which one it is. I have been able to use my DJI wireless mic 2 on here. You were able to use your Anchor microphone on yours. I was also able to use my Hollyland Lark M2s on this. So pretty much any microphone that has a clip on it or has a magnetic backing that will allow it to attach to something, you can basically just use this wand, put the wind muff over top of it, and now you have a microphone that you can hold in someone's face, or you can actually hand it to them without feeling like you're handing them your $250 microphone kit, depending on what you have. something that you don't have to get. One of the things that I noticed at CES that happened a lot was people would walk away after doing an interview, and then the interviewee is running them, hey, I still got your mic. You're not giving this to me, are you? That happened a lot of times. I saw a lot of people doing that. So these little $10, $12 hardware devices that you just basically use it to clamp on your wireless lavalier microphone to it, and then you have a microphone. You feel like you're actually holding a microphone in somebody's to their mouth, or you're handing it to them to do it themselves. And I've now used this thing on multiple occasions. I used it all the time when we were at CES, and even just playing around with it, because I want to say, I wonder if I can put these Hollylands on here. And the Hollylands work just fine. The clip that you did not take off of yours, you leave that clip on, and then you put the magnet on one side of it and slide that clip back down into it. And it works just fine.
Yeah, the anchors were a little bit too big to clip on there. So I just had the windsock covering the top of that. And I was walking around the show floor in the West Hall, and somebody runs up behind me and they're like, hey, you dropped this. And inside, I just had it in my pocket, getting ready to interview somebody else going from place to place. And it had fallen off and I didn't realize it. But yeah, that was like it's $199 for the Anker M650s if you pay full price for it. So, we're looking at out of the maybe $80 out of that $199 is one of those lavalier mics, and I just dropped it on the show floor. I also left it on the CEO of Aptera's coat, and his assistant ran up to me and gave it back. But I was already pretty far gone by the time that happened.
What are we talking about this week?
We're talking about newsletters. And Rob, I'm going to rely heavily on you because newsletters are intimidating to me, if I'm being honest. Like I'm not a great writer. I couldn't imagine what I would write or what I would have to say that somebody would want to listen to, much less pay me read, much less pay me to read. So, but I do also recognize the fact that I should probably have a newsletter. So I'm going to let you take it from there.
So we had the opportunity to talk with Charlotte Henry, who runs the Edition.net newsletter, and her platform is a bunch of things, but it is a newsletter first. So she is, and she will tell you, she is a writer first, but she also is a podcaster. She also does a little bit of video here and there. And we were just talking about, some of the things, that she did when she set up her platform. She just recently moved off of Substack onto another platform. For those of you who aren't familiar, Substack is it is many things now. It is, I think I would feel more comfortable calling it a social media platform that has a newsletter component to it. It started off as a newsletter component that they kept adding social media features to. They now have so many social media features. I think it is a social media platform with a newsletter component. To take a step back, I am so bold now, and I believe this, and we're talking about an event that just happened this past weekend as we're now recording this in relative real time. TikTok is banned in the United States. And for about 16 hours from Saturday to Sunday, it actually was blocked in the United States. ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, shut their service down on Saturday evening and didn't turn it back on until late day on Sunday afternoon. And we've known that there was a potential this could happen going all the way back until going all the way back to April of last year. That's when a bill was passed, a bill essentially that would say that if the company that owns TikTok, ByteDance, if they did not divest of their American interest, that it would be blocked here in the United States. And that happened. So over the last week or two, when people started to really feel that TikTok might actually get banned, because I think a big issue for a lot of folks is that they just didn't believe it would happen. They didn't think that it would go down. They thought that, a court would actually save them. They thought the Supreme Court would save them. They thought that President Trump, then President-elect Donald Trump, could save it. And although he has an executive order in place that is saying, well, they can run for 75 days, Apple and Google and maybe Oracle are saying, well, yeah, I see that you're saying this, but the law doesn't change. And although you're going to give us cover That doesn't mean that we still can't be sued. That these other things can't happen. It just means the federal government won't. So there's a state of limbo right now. And one of the things that would have helped an enormous amount of people is that if you had a way to contact your following outside of just the social media platform that they follow you on, you would be in a much better place than you are right now. And so because of that, I would say that I don't care what kind of creator you are. Lamar Wilson, friend of the show, we're going to try to get him back on for another episode here in the not too distant future and get some of his take on it. I hear Lamar when he's telling me that the younger generation, of folks, the even younger than millennials, they just don't use email. I get that and I understand that. But if you are looking at the creative entrepreneurship arena at all, if you are trying to, generate income from your creative products, whether it be a podcast, whether it be a YouTube channel, an Instagram account, a TikTok account, if you're trying to generate money off of that and live off of that, you've got to do something to where you have a way to contact the people who follow you without having to go through someone else's platform, namely having your own platform. So I will even step back and say it doesn't have to be a newsletter, because a newsletter is something you're going to send out repeatedly every week, twice a week, once a month, twice a month, whatever the case is. I believe that you need to have, at the very least, an email list, something that you have given people the opportunity to sign up to, so that if there are times when you need to contact them outside of a social media platform, you just have the ability to do it. Now, I'll be honest with you, an email list is not going to have the same level of, the level of people who actually open up email on an email list is not going to be the same as what open up on a newsletter, because a newsletter, people are expecting it. They want to see the next thing that you have to say. An email list is kind of a blast. They're not expecting it. So it has to pop into their inbox. They've got to see it and not perceive you as something that they don't remember signing up for and actively open up your email. But that's still better than not being able to contact your folks independently. And so many people had these issues. I watched video after video of people who are literally in tears. I don't know what to do. It's like, I can't get into CapCut anymore. I don't know. I don't even know how to, post a video on these other platforms. And if you simply just had an email list, if you simply had a newsletter, you could always go out and say, hey, these things are happening with TikTok, but I'm over here. These things are happening with TikTok. I've got my own platform in this place. These things are happening on TikTok. I'm going to be on Instagram. I'm going to be on, on Reels. I'm going to be on YouTube Shorts. You would just have the opportunity to let people know where you are, as compared to just going dark, as in the case was when TikTok was shut down for those 14, 16 hours.
The thing that, and I think we should invoke Tom Merritt here for a little bit. Everybody said it was going to go away, and they didn't have to go away. Tom brings it up all the time. Is you just couldn't download the app or host it anywhere on American servers. So right. if you were trying to access it on the web and there was I don't know, a Brazilian server you can access it from, you should be able to still access it. Although they did shut some of that stuff down, from what I understand, so but you could still get into TikTok.
There was an enormous amount of what I will call political theater, and I think if you would actually look up the definition of political theater, what happened with ByteDance TikTok, with ByteDance and TikTok over this past weekend, the weekend right before the inauguration. So we're talking about, I think they shut it down on the 18th, and then it came back up on the 19th. Political theater, the law that, there is actually a law, and Bodie, I will actually look up the name of the law. So you might need to edit here.
You know what, Rob, while you're looking that up, I will say the political theater behind this, because honestly, it really made me mad, because there was an overwhelming support for passing this bill, bipartisan, both major political parties. And then as we got closer, you have certain people from each political party going, wait a second, we don't want to do this, but they did it.
So, the law is called the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act. And we will affectionately call it the TikTok Ban Act, because that's the primary thing that's happening right now. There is a ban on TikTok. But this is the first thing. It isn't a ban on TikTok. It's a ban on any application that we perceive to be a foreign adversary controlled application. So pretty much applications that are housed in China fall into this category. TikTok being owned by ByteDance. ByteDance is a Beijing-based company. They fall into this category. So we passed this law 9 months ago. And you're right. Tom pointed this out right when the ban happened. The ban never actually said that it was going to shut down TikTok. The ban never said that you would no longer be able to use TikTok if you already had it. With the ban specifically, this is a law. This is not something that just happened this past week. And this is a law that actually was passed back in April of 2024. What the law said was that if ByteDance does not divest itself into ownership that is not based out of China, that it would be blocked here in the United States. So here's what was blocked. You would, if you're using an iPhone, you would not be able to go to the App Store and download it. Apple would be held liable for allowing people to download from the App Store. You can still use it if you already had it. You could go other places you can get it. If you're, let's say you're using an Android phone, you go other places you could get it. You just couldn't get it from Apple because Apple is an American-based company. You couldn't get it from Google, so you could not download it from Google Play. Once again, if you are using Android, you can sideload apps by default. Well, not by default. You have to turn on something, but you can sideload apps. So you could go and still download new versions of TikTok if they come out, just not going to get them from Google, if that is the case. So that's the second thing that was blocked. So those two app stores were blocked. And then Oracle actually does a lot of hosting of TikTok here in the United States, based out of Texas. They were no longer going to be able to actually host it. But none of that actually shuts anything with TikTok down. Remember, TikTok is a Chinese-based company. You don't have to connect in Texas. You just could connect in Texas. That's where our data, we had an agreement where our data or data from the United States would run through Project Texas. But if Project Texas decides to shut down because of this ban, that doesn't mean that TikTok goes away. You would just, get it from some other server somewhere else on Earth. And so that being said, the state that we're in right now, people think that, the ban has gone away, that there is no more ban. No, this is exactly what was intended to happen with the ban, because we are banned. You still cannot go to Apple and download it at the time that we're recording this. You still cannot go to Google and download this at the time we're recording it. And Oracle is no longer serving up their website at the time we're recording this. So the political theater was that TikTok decided to, on their own, to shut down their service. And this is just my opinion. I believe that they did that for the reason of if people just wake up on Sunday morning and everything kind of works like it was working before, there's not going to be enough outrage to get anything to move in our favor. So let's go ahead and say we're going to shut this thing down. And the reason we're shutting it down is because we're banned here in the United States, which technically they are. And so they shut down on Saturday. And I think that, people in the United States freaked out. I don't know what to do. It's like, people who aren't even logging into TikTok were trying to log into TikTok. Oh, I can't log into TikTok. I haven't been there in 6 months, but I can't log in now. So that's the political theater part of it. I say all that to go back to the position of why is it good to have to collect people's email addresses? Why is it good to be able to send people messages, that are not based off of someone else's company? And this is because if TikTok gets banned and the only way you have to communicate with your followers is through TikTok, then there's nothing you can do. So for those 14 to 16 hours that TikTok was banned, there was nothing that people could do. Whereas if you have an email of someone, you could at least send an email out, hope that person opens up that email and says, hey, here's where I'm at. You can go check out my content in this other place. You can check out this content on my own platform. You can check out this content on Instagram, I moved over to Snapchat. We moved over to LinkedIn. Whatever the case is, you would have the opportunity to tell people where you are. So just communicating with your followers without having to go through a third party is, to me, one of the biggest reasons why you should effort to build, at the very least, an email list. And then if not, if you want to go further than that, you actually build a newsletter to where you are regularly sending them information that is useful to them. And that's the reason why they signed up to it.
Rob, let me ask you a question. Okay. So we've talked before about the dangers. Like, it's a necessity to build your brand on some platform. Like, if you built a website today and you started throwing videos up there, you are not going to get the same engagement as if you go to YouTube or TikTok and you throw videos up there. You're just not, there's no recommendation engine sending people to your particular website. So there's a kind of a necessary evil you have to balance there. We started this conversation. You talked a little bit about Substack being a social media platform, but it's also a newsletter platform. Mm-hmm. Do people, and it's free. You can get paid on Substack. But it's not, would people find or maybe face the same kind of danger that's going on with TikTok or even Instagram or any of these other things where a policy change could change the way you make money?
So here's where, even though I'm saying that I perceive Substack as much as a social media platform today as I do a newsletter hosting platform, there is one fundamental difference with Substack in the way that it operates. And let's say, even YouTube, but definitely TikTok or Instagram Reels, operates. They allow you to create a list that once you have that list, you can export it out and take it somewhere else. So when you're on a platform like TikTok and I have a follower on TikTok, that is not your follower. That is TikTok followers. You basically are on borrowed land. You're in someone else's sandbox when you're playing with TikTok, because what you have is someone who says that I have a TikTok account, you have a TikTok account, and I'm going to follow your TikTok account with my TikTok account. If TikTok goes away, there's nothing you can do to contact that person. With email, and since we're talking specifically about about Substack, is that when you create an email list inside of Substack, you are collecting people's email addresses. Now the social media part of it is that, well, now you have people who can subscribe without even have to do it via email. They can do it via their Substack application. But the base level of the subscription, the base level of the email subscription part of Substack is that you create an email newsletter in Substack and someone can join it with their email address. And once they join it with your email address, you now have a list, which is why we call these email lists. You now have a list of everybody who has said, here's my email. I give you permission to email me from this account. So once you have that, if you decide that I don't want to be in Substack any longer, you can move from point A to point B, and you still have those same people's emails, because even though you change your platform, their email is still the same. So we'll talk back about, one of the things that Charlotte Henry in her interview, she talked about, she was on Substack, but she made a conscious decision for various reasons that she no longer wanted to be on Substack, and she moved to something else. She moved to another email provider. At the time, it was called ConvertKit. Today, they're just called Kit. So she took everyone who subscribed to her that was on her Substack newsletter and just moved them over to Kit, and they never noticed that something was different. Because they still get the emails from her in the same way that they were getting them before. In fact, they probably get even more of them now because she's got additional things she can do outside of Substack as compared to what she was able to do inside of Substack. One of the reasons why she moved. So that is just covering yourself. And I know people are saying, well, if I have 100,000 people who follow me on Substack, who follow me on TikTok, there's no way I'm going to get all of them to give me an email address. You're probably right. But can you get 10%? That would be 10,000. Can you get 5%? That would be 5,000. You at least now have 5,000 people that you can contact and say, hey, TikTok is gone. We're no longer there. We're now over here in this other place. And at that point, you're at least not starting fresh, because you're going to get at least a percentage of the people that you're able to contact. They're going to move over with you, because one of the reasons that people will actually give you, and we can get into this in the second half of this episode, Bodie, is why you would even want to create something like an email list beyond just, for CYA type of stuff. People who are following you, people who want to get information from you, they give you those email lists because it's a benefit to them. So if they're following you It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm only following you because you're on TikTok, or I'm only following you because you're on Instagram, or I'm only following you because you have created YouTube shorts, or even YouTube long form. They are following you because they like the content that you create and they want your content, and it's inconsequential where your content exists. So when you get those kind of fans, when you get those kind of followers, we'll call them the super followers. Those are the ones that ultimately drive your business, because a lot of the people on TikTok, they see your video, they follow you, they never see or pay attention to you again. But folks who give you your email address, who give you their email address, they are really interested in what you have to say and the content that you create. And the reason they've given you their email address is because they want more of what you have to say.
I want to be really careful with how I say this, because I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but an engaged follower is worth way more than just kind of let's call them a tourist, right? There are certain people that I'll come across on social media that I'm like, oh, I like their content. And maybe I do follow them, or maybe I don't follow them. And when I see them again, I'm like, oh, I like their content. But I'm not a very valuable viewer of their content, because I'm like, oh, I like their content. And then I don't think about them again. I'm thinking of a guy that I've known for a while. I don't know him very well, but his name is John Loya. He's out of Vegas. One Track John on some of the social media stuff, but he is a video game poster. Like on TikTok, he talks about video games, nostalgia stuff. It's really cool stuff. And I'm a fan of John's. Like, we're not friends. We know each other. I've had him on my podcast. I've been on his podcast. But the thing about it is, like, I have a vested interest in John. When I met him, his wife was just about ready to have kids. I had kids. Like, we've interacted over the last 8 years multiple times. I like him. I want to see him do well. I am more valuable to John in that instance because I'm an engaged viewer of his content versus, and I'm sure there's probably people that are way more engaged than I am who interact on his posts more than I do and all this other stuff. But I'm trying to think of somebody that maybe I'm not as engaged with off the top of my head, and I can't, but there's still people that I like, there's still people that I see. Like, I think Mr. Global is another one that I like. But I watch his stuff. He talks about the oil business and political things. And he's an oil person. He worked in the oil industry for a lot of years, and he kind of describes things in a way that's easy to understand for people to understand the oil business. But I'm not as engaged with him. Like, I wait until his stuff shows up. I might be following him, but I'm not actively seeking out his content. I wait till it comes to me.
Right. And this is what, let's take a complete step back and just talk about the benefits of newsletters for creators in general. So I will flat out say this. If you are a blogger, if you are actively writing your content and putting it on a blog, whether, your own blog, you're putting it on, you're putting it on Medium, you're putting it on some other platform. If that is the way you create content, there's no reason that you should not be creating a newsletter, because your content is already created for it. Back in the day, it was create your content, put it on a website, do some search engine optimization of your website, and let's then hope that people search for the keywords that you've optimized for, and then they find your content. When you think about that, that's a hard way to get a follower, for someone to find you and just keep finding you by searching for things, and your content keeps coming up. Where a newsletter, if you are, once again, creating written content, helps is that you find that person who's interested in your content, and you can simply say, hey, there's more. If you like more, you can follow me here. And now, instead of them having to actively find your content every time you create something new, you now are pushing it out to them. So every time you create something new, your newsletter goes out and you're sending that article to them, or you're sending a link to the article to them, which shows up in their email, and they don't have to actually do work to find you every single time they want to see something new that you've written. So if you are that type of creator, you absolutely want to be creating a newsletter, because you already have written the content. Take the exact same content, put it into a newsletter, and then send it out to the people who subscribe. Then I would move to, if you are a podcaster, I believe this. I believe that every podcaster should have a newsletter, because once again, when you think about the way that people consume podcasts, usually it's word of mouth. You were listening to podcast A, you heard a guest on podcast A, and then you followed them over to podcast B. But it is one of these things to where it is a lot of work on the actual listener to find the content that they want. So I believe, as a podcaster, if you are creating content and you're producing your content, even if I've had people tell me this, well, the reason I'm doing a podcast is because I don't like to write. And Bodie, you said I'm not a good writer. You've actually mentioned that to me before. There are so many tools now that you can talk into a microphone and have whatever you say in that microphone transcribed, and not just transcribed in the way that we talk conversationally, the way that you and I are having a conversation right now, but you could have that content transcribed. Then you can load it into an LLM like ChatGPT or like Gemini or like, so many other of the LLMs that are out there, and say, hey, take this transcript and then give me 15 bullet points off of the 45-minute conversation that I had. And then once you do that, you say, well, those 15 bullet points, now I want you to order them in a certain way. And now give me 3 of them and format it into a newsletter that would look good on Substack. You can get that specific when you're talking about these LLMs. So even if you don't like to write, you could take content that you talk into a microphone. Bodie, I'll announce this here. I'm working on something that is called 3-Minute Thursdays. And what it is that I want to get in front of a microphone on probably Wednesday night or Thursday, early in the day. And I'm just going to go and here's my thoughts for this particular week. And I'm not going to write that out. I'm going to talk to a microphone. I'm going to let transcription software transcribe it. Then I'm going to go to ChatGPT or Gemini, and I'm going to have it, put this into 15 bullet points. And then I want you to make it look like a newsletter. And then that thing's going to be sent out. It'll be sent out as an audio file. It'll be sent out as several clips. It'll be sent out as an actual newsletter based off of me getting in front of a microphone and talking into it for something less than 3 minutes. It's so easy to do. So once again, if you are a creator where you are writing, no excuse not to have a newsletter. You're already doing the work. If you're a podcaster, just talk into the microphone. If you don't want to actually write it, just talk to the microphone. If you are a social media creator, it gets a little different here, because now you're doing something that's outside of what you normally do. But once again, if you are used to making TikTok videos, if you're used to making Instagram reels, if you're used to making YouTube shorts, get in front of your, go through your process, and then allow some software. Generally it's going to be some type of LLM software, but let AI take your creation and then turn it into a newsletter. So you now just have something to send out. And for our listeners, many of the folks who are listening to us, they're not just creating this content because they love to create content. They're creating the content because they ultimately want to run a business off of it. So if you are a business person, if you are a coach, if you're a consultant, if you run some type of service-based business where you've actually got products that exist outside of the content that you're creating, the thing for you with creating your newsletter is that now you literally can, you send these newsletters out as part of your content strategy with your podcast. Because one of the things that people don't generally do when they're listening to podcasts is stop listening to the podcast to go take action on a call to action that you've given them. But when it's an email, you're already on your phone, you're already in front of your computer. You're just a little bit more wired to, Bodie offered me this, this cheat sheet for the top 10 electric vehicles that he thinks are going to be out in 2025. Let me go take a look at that because I'm in the market to buy one. It's so easy to get someone when you've given them something like that. And now once they do that, they're saying, hey, I want those 10, EVs that you think I should be looking at. And if you're going to be sending stuff like this, like every week, definitely send me those emails while I'm in the process of buying the car. It's only going to help me. So I just use that as an example. I completely made that up, Bodie. I don't know that you've got a cheat sheet for the top 10 cars, but if you don't and you want to create one, it's probably a good lead magnet to get someone into a newsletter for Kilowatt.
No, that's a good point. And there's a link inside the that you have to click on versus going to 918digital.com/. So that makes a lot of sense. The other thing, Rob, and you touched on this just a little bit, is with the transcriptions. Not, everybody has different abilities. Some people are hearing impaired. Some people are vision impaired. So having multiple ways for people to consume your content, our friend Allison Sheridan is really big on this, almost to the point of like it's a passion for her, for sure. Mm-hmm. Making sure that content is available for everyone to enjoy. And, even with, I mentioned 918 Digital, Allison's been on me forever to get a website, and I finally got it. And I sent it to her, and she immediately went through and she's like, here's things you need to change to make this easier for people to read. Actually, the website itself got very good reviews, and we'll talk about the service that I used someday. But the website itself got very good reviews from Allison as far as being accessible for folks. She immediately that was her first thing, is how accessible is this for folks? So if you could, if you're hearing impaired and you can read through the show versus, I guess you could also do transcription or subtitles on a YouTube channel, but yeah.
I can already hear Allison as she listens to this episode. Before she gets to this part, Bodie, when she's 10 minutes earlier in the episode, Rob, you shouldn't be telling folks that they should, create transcripts just so they could create an email newsletter from them. They should create transcripts because it's just an accessible thing to do and the right thing to do. So you're absolutely right. We should be creating transcripts for our content, regardless of whether or not we're going to use it for a newsletter or not. So if you look at it from that standpoint, you're already doing the work to make your website accessible, to make your content accessible. You might as well just go ahead and package it up and say, I want to send it out to you every week. And, Bodie, I've got a couple of different email newsletters, and I would say one of them has a really good open rate. I probably get about 27% open rate on that, which is really high. That is definitely higher than the average. Most people want to be in if you're doing 15 to 20% open rate on a big newsletter, you're doing pretty good. But once again, if I create a podcast episode and I send it out, I can only hope that people got it, that they're subscribed to it, that they remember that they're subscribed, they went and they actually listened. Another thing as a podcaster where a newsletter comes in is that I am very careful not to just advertise my show. That gets old after a while. If you're only just sending out, hey, there's a new episode out, that people are going to get tired of that really quickly. There are other things that I put into my newsletters that are not something that you're going to get from the show. So there's a reason to have the newsletter in addition to the show. But at the very least, if you're not doing anything else, just remind people that your show is there. I think that as creators, we have a tendency to want to believe that if I tell somebody about my show once and they don't do anything, it's because, well, they decided right when I told them that I didn't want to partake in your content. And that's usually not the case. People don't even realize that you're asking them to do something until they've heard it 3 times. They generally don't take action on doing anything they've heard until they've heard it 7 times. So when you think about TV commercials, you will see the same television commercial over and over and over and over again. And you'll notice, man, I think I just saw this commercial, but you don't notice it the first time you see it. You don't notice it the second time you see it. It's generally going to be 3-4 times you've seen the same commercial that you actually start to perceive, oh, I've seen this already. And then by the time you get to 6 or 7, that's when you decide that I either can't stand this commercial anymore and I wish they would stop showing it, or you're going to go and actually become a customer of the thing that you saw in that television commercial, that you've perceived. That's generally how things work. So when you are creating a podcast, we don't think, people don't generally say, I'm going to go listen to episode 1, then I'm going to listen to episode 2, and then I'm going to listen to 3. Many people do listen that way, but most don't. Most people say, oh, I like that podcast that Bodie was on. I like that podcast that Rob was on. Let me go listen. And they listen to whatever the latest episode is. And then they don't think about it anymore. And if you're lucky, they subscribe to it. But once again, even if they subscribe, unless they're getting a notification, which they probably will ignore, there's no reason for them to go back and listen again until there's something to jog their memory. And that's where a email list can come in, because even though my email newsletters that I create do not just advertise my podcast that I'm on, every time I send one out, I let folks know there's a new episode of the Tech John out. There's a new episode of this version of Daily Tech News Show. So they are announcements as well, in addition to the other content that I'm putting in there, which was the reason that the person signed up to the newsletter in the first place.
There's definitely people out there who kind of do the same thing that we do, that are more about the let's get rich quick. Like, here's how you do this. But that has a finite amount of time that it works, and then after that, you're just kind of labeled a grifter, right? So you always, no matter what you're doing, whether it's a podcast or your social media stuff, you want to provide some sort of value. That could be a comedic value, an information value, whatever. But you want to provide something that people look forward to. And when you do your newsletter, when you're doing that ask, it's at the bottom, it's not at the top, it's at the bottom. And you say, hey, by the way, this is the new episode of the Tech John. Here's what we talked about. Here's who was on that episode, or whatever. And that way, when somebody gets to that point, that is a gentle reminder. We're not in your face. We're like, I could have a lot more listeners to Kilowatt if I was hyperbolic about a lot of the different things in the EV world, or one particular company, or whatever those other things. But I have a smaller listenership, and I think more loyal, because I'm not hyperbolic in the things that I talk about. And I think that, in that same way, we don't want to beat our community over the head with what we're doing. But if you provide value, they feel, respected, but they also appreciate that they're getting this extra value. And there's a number of different ways to do it. And we're not going to really talk about that so much on this episode, like strategies and stuff. I do want to mention again that Charlotte's website, which is the Addition, ADDITION.net, she has a masterclass where she does one-to-one coaching. And then, if you want something more than that, then she has a different plan for that. Because it's so vast, depending on what your content is, what your personality is, who you want to reach. Rob, you say this all the time. Like, if there's only 10 people in the world that do what you do, and you have, or do what you're talking about, and you have 8 people out of those 10 that listen to your podcast, that is way more valuable than having 100,000 people listen to your podcast when there's 10 million people that do what you're talking about.
Yeah. I remember I was listening to, I want to say it was a Grow the Show episode. Kevin Schmetlin, he created a podcast where he basically focuses on helping not all podcasters. All podcasters will get something from his content, but he's specifically talking to people who have a business, someone who's actually got something that they can sell, in addition to being able to just create content, for a podcast. And one of the things that he was saying was he was having a conversation with someone, and they were like, yeah, I'm trying to really grow my newsletter, but we just got to like 1,800 people and we're stuck. And then when he dug into, well, who are you targeting your newsletter to? There's only like 2,900 people in the nation that they were targeting. So they got over half of them. And it's like, well, that's great. You literally half of all the people who your content could benefit are already listening to you. Those are astronomical numbers. When half of the people who can listen to you are listening to you, you're doing good. And what he did was he just changed their perception. It's like, well, wait a minute. You're not trying to create a podcast for everybody. You're trying to create a podcast specifically for these folks. And you're doing quite well. And it was just basically somebody with, some fresh eyes looking on. Is like, no, you actually are doing pretty good, because the thought of the person was, well, if I'm going to do good with this podcast, I need to have tens of thousands of people. Can't have tens of thousands of people if your target audience is only less than 3,000. So, if you got over half of 3,000 people total who would benefit from your, from your content, then you're doing pretty good.
I would agree with that. Do you have, because we've been talking for about an hour, Rob, do you have anything else in your bag of tricks when it comes to newsletters that we should pass on before we go?
Bodie, you and I are going to have more conversations about newsletters, because this conversation, we spent a lot of time talking about TikTok, which is not the only reason to have a newsletter. It's just that it is so fresh of mind. I'm seeing so many people who are now, okay, I can't have that happen again. I need to do something else. How do I set a newsletter up? It seems like Substack, Beehive, these places where you can set up free newsletters. I'll do the air quotes free. They're having a moment right now, because people are finally getting the messages that this is what happens if a social media platform goes away. You no longer can talk to the people that you were talking to before. That is one of many reasons why you should have a newsletter. So we will definitely have more conversations as to why we get into it. But I would just say this: doesn't matter what type of creator you are. If you are, if you're creating any type of content that you want people to consume, and you ultimately are going to be generating fans of that content, give those fans the ability to receive information directly from you, as compared to having to go through a third party company whose business model is keeping those people that you've collected, those people who follow you, keeping them on their platform at all costs. That is the thing you have to remember about a social media platform. They never want anyone to leave it. Those social media platforms make money by you staying on their platform for as much time as humanly possible. So if you want to be able to have the conversation with someone outside of that platform, if you want to send something and get a 15 to 20%, open rate, then newsletter is the way to do it. You may be thinking, well, that doesn't sound that great, but when it's social media, it's like 2 or 3%. When you send a message on your social media platform, maybe 3% of the people that follow you are ever going to see it. When it's email, it's going to be significantly higher than that. So if for no other reason, just to make sure that more people are getting more of your content more of the time, that is the reason that you would want to look at a newsletter or an email list. Set it up so that you have a way to contact the people outside of going through social media platforms.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That it is so hard, because in some cases, it's kind of overwhelming doing this stuff. But the more that you do it, the more you practice it. I'm learning this. I'm getting way outside my comfort zone with a lot of things that we're doing with Beyond the Post. The easier it gets, I should say. So if it feels daunting in the beginning, just know that it becomes less daunting. It becomes more of habit. And like right now, I'm talking directly into the camera. Like I'm looking directly into the camera. When we started this, I would look everywhere but the camera, and the same thing goes with a newsletter. The same thing goes with creating social media content. The same thing goes with, doing interviews or whatever it happens to be. You have to flex that muscle to grow that muscle, or you have to work that muscle to grow that muscle. Otherwise, you're just going to be in the same boat for as long as you're thinking about it, but not acting on it.
Absolutely. It's, you and I would cringe if we go back and listen to the first episodes we created. They will sound horrible to what we do today.
Nobody will hear those episodes.
They will sound horrible. So it's like this. Just if you just improve 1% every time you do something, in the course of a year, you are significantly better than you were when you started. So, like I said, I'm a fan. I know I preach this. I get on a soapbox about newsletters, but I'll say this, Bodie, email is the single biggest contributor to my checking account in this creator world that I've seen. Nothing comes close to it. I've made more money off of email than anything else. In fact, I would say I've made more money off of email than I have made almost off of, I'm not going to say everything else combined, because I have done a lot of things, but email is so, I would give everything else up. There's nothing I would give up for email. I would rather have, as a podcaster, 1,000 people subscribe to a newsletter than I would 1,000 people subscribe to my podcast, the thing that I am known for doing. Why? Because I don't necessarily know everyone who subscribed to my newsletter. I don't have a way to to directly contact, everyone. I keep saying newsletter, but everyone who's subscribed to my podcast. I put my podcast out and I hope that they will actually get it. But when it comes to my newsletter, I know that I can send an email out to a list of, if it's 1,000 people on it, I know I'm going to get 220 of them that are going to see it. And then I'm going to get another 50 or 60% of them that are actually going to take action on something that happened inside of that newsletter. And podcasting doesn't even come close to that. And podcasting is really, really good. But it doesn't come close to that. So yeah, I am a, an avid fan of it. I've been podcasting for 19 years. I've only been in the email for probably about 15 of it. I wish I would have started 4 years before, because that would just get me 4 years beyond where I am right now.
All right. I think that's a good place to end it. But Rob, I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but we had a whole conversation before we actually started the show that we recorded that we give out to our patrons. If you want to learn more about what we have for the end of season 3 for Beyond the Post, and I give a little preview of a friend of mine's podcast, which it's all in there. It's all in the behind the post parts.
Yes, come and check us out. Head over to beyondthepost.fm and you will be able to find out everything there. And if you want to get to our Patreon, it's beyondthepost.fm/Patreon, where you can get all of those patron exclusives. So come and hang out with us, on our Patreon. That's where we conduct our business.